The following is a presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Welcome to a bonus podcast for Game of Thrones post-season 5. I am Wendy Hembrock, and I am joined by the small council. Introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, this is Shannon from Vancouver, Washington, and tonight I am the Master of Bourbon.
I am Jesse Jackson from Dallas, Texas, and I am the Master of the Hat Trick. This is the third podcast I've recorded today.
Oh my goodness!
Oh wow!
Wow! Yes,
must be all talked out.
You should be the one with the sore throat, not Christine.
I did a Castle one shot with my good friend and friend of the show, Tom Zoller, and then I did a Iron Giant commentary. With John Pavlik today, and now that I'm talking Game of Thrones, so it was a good day.
Awesome. Well, I just went to work, so I'm just this is House Sytsma in Alberta, Canada, and it's the dog days of summer, I guess, or it feels like it. Everybody just wants to go on vacation at work right now. Nothing much is getting done.
And aren't you bacheloring it?
And I am. It's just me and Bella, me and the dog. This last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Christine from Michigan, the mistress of correction and hoarseness, as I have lost my voice. If you find it anywhere, please send me a message on Facebook.
And I'm Wendy, master of YouTube videos for our show discussion. And also a lot of links this week, but some fun ones. So we're going to do this show talking about some of the news as well as some more listener feedback, and we'll see what else we have time for. So first, before we get into the feedback, I want to talk about the links really quickly. Most folks are probably aware Game of Thrones has gotten 24 Emmy nominations, which is the most it's ever gotten and the most that any show got this season, so woohoo, Game of Thrones. However, yes. Whether they win anything is a question. Mm-hmm. But we also have a couple links to some interviews of Lena Headey and Emilia Clarke, who were both nominated, talking about what that means. Also got some other cast member interviews with Liam Cunningham, talking about what's coming next for Sir Davos, without too many spoilers. Jerome Flynn, who plays Bronn, talking about his initial casting for the show. A very interesting interview with Raymond Djawadi, who is the composer, talking about the music specifically for season 5. There's a cool 6 or 7 minute video that shows all the compositing of all the visual effects around Braavos. There's an interesting article talking about why folks should read the books who are only watching the show. There's a very funny music video by Axis of Awesome called Rage of Thrones. Not safe for work language or around little kids, for sure. There's also much speculation about Kit Harington and his hair and their whereabouts. And since we had recently talked about religion in our last podcast, there's a couple more links of some fairly condensed summaries of the Faith of the Seven, the Red God, and the others that folks might want to check out if they don't want to actually read the whole World of Ice and Fire book.
Just a few thoughts on those links. I like that one about the Emmy nomination reactions from Lena Headey and Amelia Clarke, and I thought it was very gracious and also very accurate for Amelia Clarke to say that Lena Headey truly deserves it, so she can join Dinklage as an Emmy recipient. That was a nice piece about reasons you want to read the books. Just as a book reader, a few thoughts from me on that. You get a lot more inner thoughts and inner monologue, as we've discussed before. They are all from the perspective of a given character. So if you're interested in that, you get to read a lot more about it. There's time for more character complexity. Your imagination can create things that not even the best special effects can render. And then it also leans more heavily into prophecy in the novels. We got a little on the show with Maggie the Frog and Azor Ahai and a few other things, but it's really woven into the fabric of the novels. And if you're into that sort of thing, like a lot of genre and fantasy fans are, you'll find a lot more of that.
I wish that we had this summary of the Faith of the Seven and Red God, Lord of Light before our discussion, because it really is pretty interesting. I agree. I thought it was really sweet. Clark talking about how she deserves it. It's going to be tough for Game of Thrones to win Emmys just because the nature of the beast. And but I would love to see Lena Headey, Headey win. I just think it would be wonderful. I don't think they're going to win the best drama. I think that's Mad Men's year. But it's always good to see that people are recognizing, this outstanding genre show, and I think it helps HBO to keep investing in not just this show but other things like that. So that's really great. And the Jeremy Flynn interview was really interesting. They got a little video with him singing. And it talks about how he kind of left everything away, and then when decided to come back, he wasn't sure about doing this. And so I thought it was an interesting thought, and especially for a fan favorite, the more we see of Bronn, the more we love him. So really good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jesse. I don't think Game of Thrones is going to win too many Emmys this year. I wonder if they're kind of going to Lord of Rings it and wait till like the last season, and then it's probably going to win quite a few in the acting category if there's anybody left. And but especially for Lena Headey, who has been great over the course of the series, but and that one episode she was really strong with the walk. But I think she's had her previous two seasons were stronger overall myself, because she had more to do. This one she was a lot more confined. I'm curious about this whole thing about the Kit spotting with Kit Harington. The producers are consistently going on record and saying no, he's not coming back. Yet we see pictures of him near one of the locations where they're shooting at. So I'm wondering, are people just not asking the right question? Are they just not talking about him coming back as another character? Or are they just saying, is Jon Snow coming back? And if the producers are emphatic about that, then he's not coming back as Jon Snow, but as somebody else. But I don't know if anybody's asked that question.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of annoyed with all the Kit spotting stuff, the comments about his hair length and all that. What they did say was that Jon Snow is dead. What they didn't say is whether or not he'll be coming back. Also, we have broken the seal on flashbacks this season, and that means that the door is open. Jon Snow could be in a flashback. Bran's coming back next season. He's got tons of visions available to him. He may have visions about Jon Snow. There's plenty of possibilities to have Kit Harington back, but to not have him be alive or it doesn't even mean that he didn't die. I think we're all agreed that he did die, but it's still a question of whether he's coming back or if it's just flashbacks. The access of Awesome's Rage of Thrones It's I think it's at a weird time because now the books are over, and the song is all about having read the books first, and that everybody else is just now jumping on the bandwagon. But at this point, the show will be first in the future bits of the story. So it's a weird perspective to have at this point in time.
I definitely agree that of the actors who are nominated for this season, the one I'd most like to win is Lena Headey. I listened to the first book on CD, and their reasoning didn't persuade me, but the reason why I found listening to book one so interesting was for a lot of the additional details about their culture, history of certain people. So those are the parts that the gaps were filled in for me that I thought were really the reason to go back and read the books. But I just haven't had time yet. And I thought it was really interesting in the Jerome Flynn interview where he talked about how he viewed this show as having sort of the genre taint. And then Jerome Flynn shows up and he's like, wow, there's really good actors. And he talked to the showrunners, and it was this really interesting story. And so the one thing that was sort of disappointing in all that was when he was talking about how he really sort of underestimated the show because he thought it was, quote, genre. But I think that this show has certainly demonstrated that genre is really, really strong. The other thing I wanted to mention was a lot of the, we'll call it stalking of Jon Snow. Jon Snow gone from the show or not, whether he's dead or alive, is kind of splitting hairs, because I think the main thing we want to know is he going to be back to participate in the story, however it happens? And I definitely agree that, Bran having visions, anybody having a dream or a flashback when they had an encounter with him is all sort of on the table now. So let's talk about some recent listener feedback we've got. First up, we got a voicemail from Pat in Maryland.
I had some thoughts about Melisandre. I was wondering if she will have lost any of her faith after Stannis' disaster, since she had botched up the whole foreseeing that he was the chosen one. But will the appearance of the White Walkers really rekindle her faith? Because I assume she'll insist that their existence is proof of her religion, that they're the other that R'hllor is fighting against. Just like she insisted that the coincidental deaths of Robb and Joffrey was due to her magic and the leeches. Also, is Davos going to remain on Team Baratheon, since Stannis is dead, and Shireen is dead, and Robert is dead, but Gendry is still alive, Robert's bastard son? Will Davos decide that he'd like to put Gendry on the throne and would then go off looking for him? And since Melisandre found Gendry once using her magic, will Davos force Melisandre to help him hunt down Gendry?
Thanks for the comments, Pat. We always appreciate them. As for your question about Melisandre, I believe she may have a small crisis of faith or maybe some moments of doubt, but I think she is absolutely too hardcore to lose her faith completely. She's seen some evidence that what she's done works. There's the 2 kings and the leeches that we've talked about, possibly 3, depending on how that works, and other tricks she's pulled. But even within her hardcore faith, remember that conversation with Selyse where she talked about some of it is in effect for the audience and kind of smoke and mirrors, and that even her visions, it may boil down to her interpretation of prophecies, and she admits that she could be fallible there. So while I think, it looks dire in terms of her betting the farm on Stannis, she may have eyes on somebody else, as we've discussed, and his hair. So I don't think she's going to give up in her quest by a long shot. And that's what makes people with hardcore faith so frightening, as we've seen with the Sparrows and others in Westeros. As for Davos, he does have a mission in the book that has not been part of the show yet, so I won't spoil that. But if he doesn't do that, I think in general, what we've seen from Davos is that he is a very honorable man, and he's had some terrible things happen to the people he cares about. Like his son died at the Blackwater, and the thing with Shireen, and now Stannis dying. But I think he will look to attach himself either as an advisor or a knight or a consultant or just in the army of somebody with honor. I think that's the thing that he most appreciates and is most looking forward to is someone with honor.
Yeah, Pat, thank you so much for the great feedback, and I also want to thank you. In the family of Game of Thrones podcast, Cast of Kings is going to do a season 1 rewatch, and they're going to have a book club, and Pat offered to be my book club buddy. That since he says it's always a good time to reread the book, so he said if I wanted to read it, he'd hang there with me and we could kind of talk about it. So thanks for that. Melisandre's got to have faith. Faith will be rewarded, as the boss says, and I think she's going to believe there is a major plan. There is a bigger picture, and that she believes that ultimately things are going to work out. At least that's how I think it is. So we'll see. And I almost think Davos is just going to go, to heck with this. I'm going to find a farm somewhere. I should have been a baker, or something. I just he's like, I couldn't protect
an
it.
onion farmer.
Yes.
Yeah, an onion farmer. There you go. So I almost see him going, just to hell with all of this. I'm just moving on and going back with my cut off fingers and go enjoy what's left of my life.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Those are good questions, and it's tough to answer for both characters because because they're both at the location where the biggest focus of fan attention is right now in the off season, and that's of course with the body of Jon Snow. If I had to take a stab at it, I would think that Melisandre is going to come back to see this lovely collection of this supercharged Targaryen blood pouring out of Jon Snow, and maybe she'll have some like blood taffy or something like that. But I think she's going to collect all that blood and and say that she was led from that battle back to the castle to get this blood, because this is kind of like nitro for her power. And what she does with that, whether she uses it to resuscitate or bring back this Jon Snow in another form or whatnot, I don't know. But I have a feeling that she's going to be collecting a lot of blood when she gets back. As for Davos, I see him as a kind of a God's King's Hand kind of character, second, like a devil's advocate character. But the problem is, I'm not sure who he would align himself with, because he's probably not going to be so crazy about the events that have transpired at the Black Castle. Maybe he's going to. Oh, geez, that's a long hike. I'd like to see him end up with Daenerys and Tyrion. So maybe that will happen.
So you just want to get the whole band together, the good guys.
Yeah.
Lou, I noticed you said something that you weren't really on board with before. You referred to Jon's blood as Targaryen blood.
Oh, I still don't like it, but it seems pretty incontrovertible at this point.
Okay, just thought I'd check. I'm gonna echo Shannon's thoughts. Really, I don't think Melisandre has lost her faith, but she's gonna have to do some serious reevaluating. She's clearly been interpreting the visions incorrectly. As for Davos, I don't think he's going to go looking for Gendry. He's not the type to follow a bloodline so much as he follows a code of ethics. To him, Gendry was just an innocent victim. I like Shannon's thought that he's probably going to find someone he finds honorable and join up with their cause. And I was thinking that Tormund would do the honorable thing and follow up, even though Jon is dead, follow up with their agreement and defend the wall when the time comes. So maybe Davos would join up with him.
I like that idea. I also think that Melisandre I don't think she's going to like abandon her faith. She might maybe dial back the arrogance a little bit, but I don't know. I'm even wondering if she would say she went into plan B, in the finale when she realized that this plan wasn't going to work with Stannis and she decided to head back to the Wall. At that point, she'd already decided Jon Snow was plan B. For Davos, I definitely agree that he's going to follow whoever he thinks he can help and is honorable to do so. He's definitely not going to back the Night's Watch. What I was thinking was maybe Davos might help Tormund do something to maybe, if Sansa and Theon show up, maybe they sort of form a little band and decide to do what Stannis originally wanted to do, which was restore Winterfell back to the Starks. And maybe they'll be able to sort of assemble a little coalition in the north, possibly. Would love to see Davos, join forces with Brienne. The other direction could be that, say Melisandre does resurrect Jon Snow, then maybe he'll get behind helping Jon Snow restore order, or maybe he and Jon Snow will go and help Tormund and head to Winterfell too. So really a lot of possibilities, I hope. And I definitely don't want to see him retire to the onion farm for sure. So thanks for that, Pat. That was really cool questions and thoughts. And now I want to move on to it's a very interesting theory and prediction from Lee talking about what might happen to Theon, Sansa, Jon Snow, Bran, and Ramsay Bolton.
I want to predict the way Ramsay dies because that would just give me immeasurable amounts of pleasure, actually. But anyway, I think Jon Snow becomes Ghost, wargs into Ghost. Being confused, he's going to be a little lost at first. He will run into Bran, because Bran, being the god in the trees, will be aware and will help Jon figure out what's happening. Meanwhile, Theon and Sansa are trying to go north, and Ramsay is going to chase them down. There's no doubt about it. Well, my theory is that they're all going to converge, and the wolves, Bran and Ghost, are going to tear Ramsay apart, alive, hopefully, because that man really needs to die.
My notes after I listened to that message, and thanks for sending that in, was basically LOL. That made me giggle, and I love the pleasure that she and undoubtedly many of the audience would take in making Ramsay suffer. That's a very creative way to do it, and one of the many active theories about what would happen with Jon Snow. So I don't know that that's... I would lay money on that happening, but it sure would be entertaining as heck to see. And I like the idea about more of them hooking up and seeing more of Bran's active involvement in the storyline. And you always want to see dire wolves. So thanks, Lee, for the theory. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Lee, I think you hit all the great 3 points, right? Jon returns, and you give a really clever way why. You get more dire wolves, which is always a good thing. And Ramsay dies. So you also hit the trifecta today. Great feedback, and it made me smile.
Yeah, I had another LOL here, and I hope that I never get you upset at me, because you seem to be very, very into very vicious revenge. But that was a great comments there, and I think a lot of other viewers would be very happy along with you if those events unfolded the way you've put them down in your comment.
I'm on board with this. Write it, print it, shoot it.
I have to admit, when I listened to this, I had a big smile and I was laughing at the gruesomeness and the creativity around having Ramsay ripped to shreds by two dire wolves. I think we should note that, this season was light on dire wolves, so that might mean they were saving their pennies for some big dire wolf effects in season 6. So that's very plausible. And I really like this rationale that Jon Snow wargs into Ghost And because he has done it before, he doesn't know what he's done for a while. That's plausible to me for how you could not see him for a little bit of time, but he's around. The other thing I read online though was definitely to the other side of the resurrection being through the the Lord of Light, flaming sword resurrection type thing happening, which also doesn't necessarily have to be immediate. So as long as they don't really burn his body up, we still got a possibility of seeing somebody that looks like Jon Snow walking around. Or, it'd be okay if he was like a talking direwolf or we heard his inner monologue or something. But thanks again, Lee. That was really awesome creative thought. We appreciate. And we also got some comments from Davia, who has been working her way through the season 1 DVD Blu-ray that she won in the Small Council contest. And so she had sent in some thoughts for us about listening to the recent discussions in the context of her rewatch of season 1. So one of the things she pointed out was the possible line that Syrio tells Arya, watching is not seeing, and wondering if in hindsight he was foreshadowing Arya's blindness. Also, the idea that the weirwood trees or the godswood trees that have the faces in them, wondering if, who were those faces and if they were actually faces of people. And if, we're going to see Bran in one of them at some point, or will it be sort of like the Ents where they wake up and get angry for having been cut down in the past? We also got a lot of Theon in season 1, very begrudgingly treating Bran, like a brother. He really was never a good Stark. He was always talking about how he wanted to get back to the Iron Islands, but then once he does, he doesn't really seem to understand his place, and maybe that's part of the karma that's happening to him. She also talked about having a better understanding about why people think the R plus L equals J. Also noted that the Dothraki took prisoners and sold them as slaves. Drogo even did that. We saw him do that. And she pointed out the irony that Dany then became the freer of slaves, and Jorah had been banished from Westeros for selling and trading slaves. So the slavery theme was really present right from the start of season 1. And then the last question she had was, if the R plus L equals J theory is true, why didn't Ned tell Catelyn? And she kind of concluded after rewatching season 1 that she realized, Robert was really cruel. He was still trying to assassinate Dany, even though she'd been exiled for many years. So it's plausible that Ned really didn't want Robert to kill him, which I thought was interesting. And the other thing she pointed out was that Littlefinger had been scheming, all the way from the beginning and even prior from that. And it just became even more apparent when she rewatched.
Yeah, Davia, thanks for the comments. You've been great about sending in comments for the Small Council to talk about and participating in the forums, and we really appreciate your enthusiasm and feedback. There's a lot of stuff that you commented on, so I'm not going to hog it all. I will say about foreshadowing, that's one of the things that when you're adapting a work that at the time they started had several volumes to draw from, you do have the ability to subtly lay in the groundwork for some effective foreshadowing. And I think when you go back and watch those early episodes, you can see a lot of stuff that you may not have noticed at the time. And obviously the Benioff and Weiss and a lot of the writers are intimately familiar with the source material and made sure to do that to give little Easter eggs or tips of the cap, if you will, to those of us that have read ahead to say, hey, they get it. And there are little things that you can pick up on, I think, that were skillfully woven into the narrative. And that's one of the things Wendy and I have talked about reading the history of Westeros in that coffee table book, The World of Ice and Fire. And part of that is explaining the Andals and the First Men and a lot of that stuff. But I don't think anybody, even the supposed maesters who wrote it, talked about if the faces are like children of the forest who have then passed on or somehow evolved into becoming those faces. I don't think there's any accurate lore or representation of it, but it'll be interesting to see, are those people that have just aged or, become one with the planet or the godswood or whatever, and would we be able to see Bran's face in there? That's certainly an interesting theory. I think we'll talk a little bit more about the Dothraki possibly when we look at some of the historical videos. And then the last thing on the R plus L equal J theory, when you take everything into consideration, Robert was a good friend of Ned, but Ned understood Robert for all his bluster and all his faults, could be a vicious mofo. I mean, he had children killed, he had people put to death, and he had a legitimate and bone deep beef with the Targaryens. And so if Jon was indeed a part of that bloodline, Jon would not be safe. So, Ned was not the greatest detective, but I don't begrudge him keeping that secret.
Yeah, and thank you again. Wonderful feedback, and I'm glad you're enjoying your well-earned prize. This gives a little more credence to Ned's silence. In the past, I've kind of thought, and I've heard other people say, that Ned is such a man of honor that if he promised his sister he would not tell anyone, he would take that literal, and he couldn't tell anyone, including Jon, including his wife, and he would just let her think he had been unfaithful instead of breaking that promise, which is very much in Ned's character. As many people, his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. So I like the idea that he had another reason of worrying that his good friend, but slightly crazy in a different way than the Mad King, would hurt, Jon. I had rewatched part of the, I had gone through different episodes before this new season had started, and Theon was never the greatest guy. It was like he was close to Rob, and everything else was just he grudgingly, as you put it, put up with them. So I hate to say that he got what's coming to him, but maybe he got to what he's coming to. So thanks for the feedback as always.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Davia. And it's great to see all this feedback coming from Oshawa. Woo, my old hometown. Anyhow, you got a lot of great comments here, and I think in general, especially for people who haven't read the books, probably rewatching, especially the early season, where you're just really trying to learn to name the character. So there's all this other stuff going on that just really flies by if you haven't read the book. It's really tip of the iceberg watching because it's just so overwhelming to be absorbed into this whole new universe. It's much like if imagine movie viewers for the first time, if they have never read Lord of the Rings, you go see Fellowship of the Rings. There's just so much tapestry to the world that it's really hard to absorb it all in the first season. So I'm glad you got the chance to rewatch it and put those DVD Blu-rays to good use. And as to other points, I agree with you on the whole R plus L equals J theory. That's very interesting, and I agree with what Jesse said, that Ned Stark is a man of his word, and that was something that he would carry with him, and it was his greatest strength. And as we saw, it turned out to be also his greatest weakness.
So I'm only going to talk about 3 points from Davia's email, sorry. Watching is not seeing. I don't think that was really foreshadowing, at least not on the character's part. But I think now that Arya is no longer able to watch, perhaps she will see better. About the Dothraki taking prisoners, taking the slaves, and selling them, I remember that Dany was not comfortable with that. She said something about it and did her best to save some from it where she could, but she didn't really have the power to say anything or to stop it or provide a better option. So now she's probably doing her best to make up for that. As for why Ned didn't tell the truth about Jon to Catelyn, and I hope people aren't getting sick of me saying this, but this goes back to my issues with paladins. The ones who aren't good at being paladins, they tend to take their oaths to heart as the letter of the law rather than the spirit. It's assumed that Lyanna, on her deathbed, made Ned promise not to tell anyone about Jon's true parentage. His marriage to Catelyn was arranged. He didn't really know her that well and didn't know if she could be trusted. Later on, though, he should have told her, once they had grown to love each other and trust each other. But he kept to the letter of his oath and just didn't tell her. And things probably would have gone a lot differently if he had spoken up about it. And she probably wouldn't have hated Jon so much, wouldn't have hated Ned so much, but, he just didn't feel like telling anybody. And that's just crazy because eventually the truth would have had to come out. All he was doing was just saving life, not saving someone important. Just this was his sister's son, and that was it. And it didn't seem to matter beyond that to him. Just keep him alive.
Well, I think you point out 2 things. One, he is, the paladin type, so he was honoring his promise. And you make a really good point that he doesn't know Catelyn really that well when they get married. But as the years go by, I think he didn't tell because Catelyn was spiteful. I think what will happen is, maybe he really thought, well, someday Catelyn's going to get really pissed off at me and she's going to tell Robert, or her crazy sister might find out and tell somebody. So I think there was a level of distrust there in Catelyn herself that he didn't do that, or her extended family. And also, definitely, I think the show did this brilliantly. In the pilot, you see Robert coming and he's grieving for this woman, and we think he is the wronged party because they were engaged and this guy stole his wife, and he's obviously a mad rapist. and instead, and I think this is probably coming across in the books a lot more clearly than it did in the show, the idea that Lyanna was Helen of Troy. And if Lyanna was Helen of Troy, then, Robert was the guy she didn't want to stay with. So that kind of makes a little bit more sense in the context of all this machinations.
Hey, Wendy, a question about trusting Catelyn, because I thought that was interesting, and I never really considered it from that point of view. I mostly looked at it from Ned's. But do you think his hesitancy to tell Catelyn, I started to think, Ned knows that she was close with Baelish, and nobody trusts Baelish as far as they can throw him. Do you think that's also a factor in it?
Well, I think it could be, although Ned did kind of trust Baelish when he got to King's Landing, or at least he was half willing to give a shot. So I don't know. I just think that Ned, I think it was honoring a promise, but we saw how Catelyn treated that kid horribly. And maybe Ned even concluded, well, she's so set, she's so fixed, and she is so uncharitable to an innocent that once she learns he's actually valuable, that might be just giving her too much power, or, it's too much of a wild card with her, maybe. I don't know. I think those are all some really good thoughts. So thanks again, Davia, for all of your questions and comments. And I'm glad you're enjoying the season 1 DVD Blu-ray. And we also got some feedback online from Kyle Denny. And he was talking about some famous actors who are fans of Game of Thrones, specifically Nathan Fillion, and was asking us to sort of do dream casting of Nathan Fillion in the show. Kyle would like to see him become one of Jacques and Hagar's other faces. And so I want to hear who specifically, if there's a name or what kind of a character would you like to see Nathan Fillion play? And then maybe we might do some more dream casting.
Probably the best way to do that. There was a video circulating recently that it was one of those wrap-ups or effects things, and it had like lots of people that had made cameos, like writer Brian Cogman was in a scene, just walking by a table, or I can't pronounce Sugar Rios, the band, were performing.
Sigur Rós.
Sigur Rós was performing at the Red Wedding, and lots of musicians have had cameos. So I think maybe if it was, just in a crowd scene or something like that where he was virtually unrecognizable, well, like his cameo in Guardians of the Galaxy, he was the big monster in the prison, and you could barely even tell that was him unless you were really looking for him. But if it was something where you could see his face, I think it would be fun to see him like a sellsword or a pirate that kind of echoed Malcolm Reynolds.
Yeah, I think it's kind of perfect to have him just as a face. That way it wouldn't everything. I would love to see Sean Connery, though I know he doesn't act anymore. I think you could just go through Kenneth Branagh, almost anyone of the, that when you think of top British actors. And, it'd be interesting, like if they had I don't know if there's another, character of an elder statesman, but to have Judi Dench on this thing would be amazing. And, as a fanboy, I wouldn't mind any of the doctors, doing a quick cameo somehow in there. That would just be kind of nice. So, yeah, I think it's a really fun. And I think one of the things this show does really well is, finding characters and actors and putting them in their parts. And so I certainly, as a fanboy, would love to see some of this, but I got to tell you, I'm going to trust them because they have, at least from my perspective as a non-book reader, have hit 100% on casting.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think Shannon nailed the roles that would be the best fit for Nathan. Would be either a sellsword or a pirate. Maybe he could be Bronn's brother Bryn or something like that. That'd be kind of fun to see him playing off of him. Because outside of that, I just can't see him playing any, because part of Nathan Fillion's charms is his sort of larger than life personality. And those are the only kind of roles that would allow him to do that. And as for other actors, I would say the obvious choice, again, well, not British, but Australian, would be John Noble, who, of course, we first really came to know as Denethor in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, he would just be a natural fit in here anywhere for any one of the factions, really. I would love to see that, and I'm really excited to see him on this season of Elementary as Sherlock Holmes' father.
I was thinking maybe Nathan Fillion could be a bartender, just a cameo scene, or possibly go like a totally different route. I've seen him as a priest in a few things, so maybe he could be a red priest. Maybe he could hang out with Thoros of Myr,
a brothel owner.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was actually thinking he could be a member of the Faith of the Seven. Because they've got sort of wandering packs of those out and about in the woods. And I was thinking back to his Buffy role when he played whatever Caleb. He played, the first Caleb.
Yeah, awesome.
Also on Dracula 2000, but that was a regular priest.
Oh, I don't even remember that. Sellsword, definitely. Pirate, definitely. But I agree. He could also be a White Walker. He could be like in the White Walker army at some point amongst the crowd. For other people casting, I immediately thought of my boy, who's not a boy, Sir Patrick Stewart. I would love to see him on Game of Thrones. And just to do the full employment of Mark Shepard. I'd love to see Mark Shepard somewhere show up. And also Michael Caine. I would love to see him on this show.
Ooh.
But I like the idea of Manu Bennett, too.
Yeah. Well, anybody from Spartacus would be good, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Sinbad himself.
Jamie Murray would be, you know.
She'd be outstanding,
she's
too.
great. Didn't
She was awesome. And she was my vote for a woman doctor. If they were going to have a woman doctor, I wanted her to be it. So, yeah. So, yes, I think she'd be awesome in this show.
Very cool. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up with the feedback. The next time we get together, I had mentioned before that I found some really cool YouTube discussions called Game of Thrones Academy. And it's by two hardcore fans, one of whom is a history professor. And they talk about the story in the context of the actual Middle Ages and the inspiration which George R. R. Martin has stated inspired him, but talking a lot about sort of what we can glean from history that he might borrow again. Because as we've been talking, you know, a lot of times the best parts of stories are pulled from things that keep happening over and over again in human experience. You know, it's like the BSG tag, all this has happened before and it will happen again. And that's definitely a theme that comes across if you read the World of Ice and Fire books, is how the created history of the Andals and the Free Folk and the Targaryens might have sort of not exact repetition, but similarities that might come around again during different historical periods. So in the next show, we're going to talk about some of these specific topics, and I'll just give a couple examples. Like they did one video that talks about Old Valyria and what it might parallel to in the Middle Ages. And there's similar discussions. So that's what we're going to talk about in our next show. Also want to encourage folks to send any additional feedback. And especially we'd like to know if folks are interested in listening to us do a season 1 rewatch, because we're kind of thinking about it, but we're not really sure. So we're curious if folks are interested, and let us know. And let us know thoughts about anything else too. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up for this week. But before we go, I want to thank all of our listeners and thank my small council members, Shannon, Christine, Lou, and Jesse. We will see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
We love to get your feedback. Call us at 206-202-4182 or leave us a Skype voicemail to our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV name. We have many ways to keep the discussion going on our blog. Drop by tuningintoscifitv.com and leave a comment. On the blog, you'll also find links to the forum discussions and other links to follow our Twitter and RSS feeds and find our Facebook account.
Listen to Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV on Stitcher Radio On Demand. Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. You've been listening to a Game of Thrones special from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, Episode 51, recorded July 28, 2015.